Hello, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to our Made by Us event. We are really glad to have you here. We are, of course, marking a little over a year since the Inflation Reduction Act was passed, and we have seen a clean energy boom since the act was passed into law. And President Biden's clean energy plan has, so far, there's been over 200 new clean energy projects announced. That's creating over 170,000 new jobs and over $250 billion in investments that are going into local communities to help rebuild, revitalize, and really these companies are at the forefront of making all of that happen. So we are very grateful to have them here. I want to thank all of our co-sponsors. I did not say who I was. Hi, I'm Lori Lotus, Climate Power. I want to thank, and to make sure I get everybody, Clean Energy for America, Elemental Accelerator, Rewiring America, E2, Drawdown Labs, and Ceres for co-hosting the event with us today. Now, allow me to welcome John Podesta, Senior Advisor to the President for Clean Energy Innovation and Implementation. Our special guest speaker really doesn't need an introduction, and I am lucky enough to have worked with him in several different iterations. So I'm just going to turn it over to John. Thanks.
Amazing Lori Lotus, and to Climate Power for convening this event. It's just been a year and a little bit. We celebrated at the White House on August 16th when the bill was actually signed. But for some of you who are in the room, probably, you participated in that celebration in the White House a year ago this week. I'm really excited to be here with 9 leaders from business that are building our clean energy future as we speak. What we've witnessed under President Biden is, I think, nothing short of a clean energy boom. Much of it is spurred by the Inflation Reduction Act, as I noted, passed just a year ago. The law, I like to say, is the strategy is government enabled but private sector led, and that's what we are going to talk about this morning, and then answer some questions from the press if they have some. It gives policy certainty that tells companies to go big. 10 years, in most cases, of predictable credits that can be planned on, invested in behind, and that's why we're seeing the kind of activity that's taken place just in the past year. Over $110 billion in new clean energy manufacturing investments, and in the same time frame, utilities have announced more than $120 billion in new planned clean energy investment. It's why the Inflation Reduction Act is being called the Manufacturing Renaissance Act, which we're proud of. And these investments are happening really across the country, as you'll hear today. They're already making a difference for American workers. Clean energy projects that have been announced or moved forward since the IRA are creating, as Lori noted, more than 170,000 jobs in 44 states and counting. And thanks to the laws, enhanced tax credits for projects that pay prevailing wages and use registered apprentices, we're making sure that these are good-paying jobs that can support a family, that offer a chance to join a union, jobs that attract and support a workforce that looks like America, jobs that can lead to an entire career in clean energy. It's all part of the President Biden's Bidenomics strategy to invest in America and build an economy from the middle out and the bottom up. And these companies are showing us how it's done. So I think we should jump into the conversation, and I'm going to start with Joe Mastrangelo, who's the CEO of EOS. Joe, I think just last week,
yes,
the company was the beneficiary of one of the programs that's being implemented through the Loan Program Office. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what EOS is doing in Pennsylvania and how the IRA is supporting that?
Great, thanks, John, and thanks for the invite to be here today. It's an exciting time in the energy industry. You know, I've been in the industry for 30 years. Spent the last 5 years leading EOS. EOS is a stationary storage, long duration energy storage company that uses a zinc bromine-based, water-based electrolyte. What we do is our R&D facility is in Edison, New Jersey, and our manufacturing facility is in a town called Turtle Creek, or Turtle Creek if you're from Pittsburgh. It's actually in the facility where Westinghouse started 180 years ago. We've built up manufacturing over the past 3 years. We brought back our entire supply chain into the U.S., have done supply chain development. We now stand over 300 employees in Turtle Creek. It's important to note, and John, I'll echo your thoughts of the industry was going this way. I spent 25 of my 30 years in hydrocarbons. The industry was moving this way before the IRA. What the IRA has done is accelerated that move that we need to do to cleaner sources of energy in our energy mix. It's enabled us to build from an empty building 3 years ago into a vibrant facility with over 300 employees manufacturing batteries. So it truly is a manufacturing renaissance. Now, to be able to do that, you've got to be able to have a product to build, so you've got to do the innovation, which we're very good at. You got to have a framework that allows you to grow your company into a market that's growing and develop your workforce and develop your supply chain. And that's what we've been able to do. And it has accelerated in the past year. And it's very exciting to see what is happening on the demand side for our product and what is happening now for manufactured in America to prove that we can still build things in the U.S.
It's, when I heard you, that's the first time I understood that the building was in the original Westinghouse manufacturing.
Yes, yeah.
I think there's a kind of theme going across America because GE just announced that they're bringing back a turbine and nacelle factory,
Yep.
Opening a line to build in America to service the wind industry, a line that's built in the original GE factory.
It's connected where I started my career 30 years ago.
So it's,
yes.
at least the building stock still remains. Yeah. It's really great. Tanya, can I turn to you? You might have a good perspective, and maybe you could tell us a little bit about your career and now your business in the clean energy boom and how it's going to affect workers. And if you, I'll just turn the floor over to you.
Well, I think I have a unique perspective because I started my career as an electrician going through apprenticeship in the IBEW. I was the first woman in Local 917 and the first black woman in the state of Mississippi to be a journeyman in the union. And I've owned my own electrical company for 23 years now. And I like to say, it's been Christmas every day with the IRA. Every day we're getting asked to be on projects, asked to do things, but when it comes to the workers, I'm one of 2% of women that are electricians in the United States and one of 8% that are black. This is a tremendous opportunity for minorities and women to come into this industry that I love. You just can't imagine how it feels to be able to get enough work to be able to keep your union brothers working. I'm not just an owner; they're still my brothers and sisters. Mm-hmm. So it kind of hits a little differently for me. But as far as my business, it's been really hard for me in the private sector to make it over the 5 million mark in sales a year because I live in the deep south. I operate out of Atlanta. And it's been really tough. And so with all the work with the IRA, even the BIL as well, it's so much work. It's not enough contractors anyway. So it's my opportunity to be able to scale my business like never before, and to be a trailblazer and a pioneer at this time. It's a really, really good feeling.
Great. Tony, I'll turn over to you. You do the Italian pronunciation?
Frazzoni.
Frazzoni.
Yes, sir.
Okay. English.
Yes, English. Yeah.
Me too. I'd be put a stop in Italy. What got you into clean energy? I know you're a combat veteran. You served in Afghanistan. Why did you decide to go into this business?
Yes, sir. So, I was born and raised in the Rust Belt, Akron boy, and then I went to school at Xavier in Cincinnati, and then I commissioned as an engineer officer. Energy was never something I thought I would go into. But in 2014, I was in Afghanistan, and what attracted me about the engineer branch was you could build stuff and blow stuff up, which appealed to me, right? The creator and destroyer side, those were pretty cool. But in Afghanistan, we were there specifically to find improvised explosive devices along routes, right? And this was true in both Afghanistan and Iraq, but obviously IEDs were the #1 killer of US troops in both theaters, and a particularly attractive target were slow-moving, unarmored fuel convoys. So
Right.
what I don't think a lot of people appreciate is, a lot of fuel obviously goes into, military vehicles, not exactly the most fuel-efficient things on the planet, right? But also, all of our power was generator-based. All of our electricity was generator-based. And so what that means in a mountainous, landlocked country is that somebody has to get a tremendous amount of fuel into Afghanistan. And there was obviously significant financial cost to that, but also a human cost, right? And so I quite literally had a front row seat to what you might describe as how to not do energy on an international scale, right? And so all of this was happening in a place that was 100, 120 degrees outside, and nobody was incorporating the sun into anything. And so, quite frankly, that pissed me off. And I knew after the Army, this is something that I wanted to get involved in, predominantly from an energy independence perspective and a national security perspective, more than anything.
And how's it going?
Great. So, essentially what we're doing is we kind of looked at what are the foundational elements to the energy transition. If you want to actually deploy solar and storage and EV charging, what does that actually require? And we were kind of shocked that right now it requires a bunch of siloed, kind of separate, different power electronics devices. Tanya would know well. They're almost all made by different manufacturers with different specifications, and almost all of them are coming from overseas. So we didn't think that was
mostly from China.
Exactly. So we didn't think that was a smart way to do the energy transition. So we kind of took a note from the iPhone and said, okay, if there's all these siloed devices, right? If there's one to make telephone calls, one to take pictures, and one to get on the internet, let's combine these things. Let's kind of reimagine what that hardware layer ought to look like. Let's combine all of these things into one physical device, and let's make it cheaper. Let's make it easier to install. Let's make it more modular, and most importantly, let's make it in America.
Great. Steph, let me get you in and talk a little bit about the perspective from consumers. Solstice is really involved in ramping up production for community solar. And I wonder, what's the value proposition to consumers? How's it going? And how do you see the IRA aiding the deployment of cost-saving technology for consumers?
Yeah, great question. So 4 out of 5 Americans cannot actually put solar on their rooftop because they're a renter, or there's a tree covering their roof is made out of the wrong materials, it's facing the wrong way, or they can't afford the upfront cost of solar and they don't have the right FICO credit score to get access to financing. So for all the people that are locked out of rooftop solar through no fault of their own, there's an option called community solar for them. And community solar is a way that people don't pay anything up front and they're getting guaranteed savings on their bill every single month. It is one of the only tools in our clean energy toolkit to get people guaranteed savings on their electricity bill from day one. And it means that everyone across the income spectrum in America can get access to it. So Solstice is connecting households and businesses and nonprofits to community shared solar farms somewhere in their community. And our software is handling the customer experience for the life of the 20 to 25 year project. We're integrating with utility bills and things like that. So when we go out into communities, people think, wait, this sounds too good to be true. What do you mean? I've never heard of solar that can save me money. And yet, when you look at the industry projections for community solar, we're going to put another 8 gigs in the next 5 years online in just the states that have legislation. And there are a bunch of states like Ohio, Wisconsin, Michigan that are considering adding community solar to their programs as well. So the Inflation Reduction Act is thought of as the biggest investment in climate action in American history. But we need to think of it more as an investment in American families, because the Inflation Reduction Act is going to help millions of American families get savings on their electricity bill at a time where so many people are struggling to pay their bills. And my mom was one of those single moms who raised 3 kids on a salary below the poverty line. I was born and raised in Hawaii, and I used to work in solar abroad in India and Pakistan. And I had a realization that back home in America, so few of us have access to clean energy. So few of us get to take part in this revolution, but the Inflation Reduction Act is actually changing that in the now. And what we do today will change our path tomorrow.
A couple of the programs that really will, I think, support community solar are just really rolling out now.
Yeah.
The allocated credit, 48E,
Yep.
And the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund financing. Are you already beginning to plan or anticipate those provisions being available to build out your business?
Yeah, we work with a lot of amazing developer partners who are installing and building these solar farms, including some in this room right now. And we're already helping them anticipate, how do you plan for and apply for the low-income tax credits? That guidance that came out just a few weeks ago on the low-income tax credits is 150 pages long. And so helping people parse through it.
Hopefully you've finished the whole.
Yes, we have. We are all caught up on the details. But, each of these guidances are detailed because we want to make sure that the families that need the resources get access to them. So you want to have the intended benefit. And so we are helping developers connect to the low-income tax credits. We're helping our community partners like municipalities and nonprofits connect to direct pay in the Inflation Reduction Act so that they can actually finance solar on site. So we're seeing so much activity happen. And for the first time in the 9 years I've been doing community solar, developers and financiers are in the mainstream talking about low-income inclusion. I had not seen that before the Inflation Reduction Act.
That's great. People ask me what I do all day, and I now have a new answer, which is I read 150 pages tax guidance documents prepared by the Office of Tax Policy at the Department of Treasury, which is true. Dr. Ahmed, I was really interested in seeing what your company is doing, which is also consumer-oriented, which is to extend the range for electric vehicles. And it seemed amazing to me, but talk a little bit about what the technology is and what the company's up to.
Yeah, absolutely. So our Next Energy, we are a homegrown American battery manufacturer. The company was founded 3 years ago, before the infrastructure bill and before the IRA, but we've been absolutely accelerated in our mission to bring products to market that help accelerate electrification. We are focused really on a couple of verticals, but the one that we think is so important is to be able to increase the range of EVs so that we can actually move the market and increase consumer adoption. So we're very focused on the needs of our consumers and how our products can actually deliver the requirements that can allow people to switch from driving a combustion engine vehicle to an electric vehicle. The company in our last 3 years has also, we're entering the utility scale energy storage market, which has been heavily supported by the passage of the IRA and the standalone tax credits for storage deployment. We're bringing a gigafactory to the state of Michigan, and so I think that's the other side of what's so important with the Inflation Reduction Act is that it has enabled a homegrown American company that is comprised of Americans who touched some of the earliest development of this battery technology, 20 years ago, to now bring that commercial technology to market. So we're bringing a 20 gigawatt hour factory to the state of Michigan. We'll have over 2,100 jobs at scale. We'll start producing cells on our prototype line at the end of this year, actually, in that factory. And I'd say that this would not have been possible on this timeline without the Inflation Reduction Act, because it has helped us to unlock additional capital to continue to scale. And, we see the supply side production tax credits that incentivize local manufacturing and localization of our supply chain. We're very committed to materials that are safer for our customers. So we're focused on iron-based chemistries. These are more abundant materials as well. And then we're also working to develop a North American material supply chain. All of that is going to bring economic activity to the United States. And, doing this in Michigan is really exciting because we're seeing that ecosystem develop. And, my background is a social scientist. I'm a social scientist. And I think one of the things that I love the most about the Inflation Reduction Act is the enablement of the scaling of these jobs and the cadence within which we're going to do so. And we're really revaluing what it means to make things in America again. It's really exciting to be able to work on bringing diversity to battery manufacturing, working to enable caretakers and moms to be a part of the manufacturing workforce, and to have a paradigm shift to say that manufacturing can be a career that has a lot of opportunities. And, we have over 1 to 2 million battery manufacturing jobs coming to the United States by 2030. And I would say that is a renaissance in manufacturing. And we're really excited to be a part of it and supported by this landmark legislation.
People kind of looked at the supply chains that had developed around the globe, largely running to China on the battery side, and said, this is just impossible. But you're proving that it's not.
Yeah, I'd say it's not impossible. It takes it's every step in the right direction, and it's a lot of it's collective bricks being laid, and you need to establish the manufacturing capacity to attract the suppliers to lift the supply chain. And when you invest in battery factories, you're also investing in the upstream. We're building phenomenal partnerships in North America and Canada, across the U.S. And I think that's the other part of the IRA that's phenomenal, is its collective action. And as a social scientist, like collective action plus this economic policy, it's an inevitability now that we're going to arrive at phenomenal manufacturing here in the United States.
I'm going to shift to Gilbert, and you're engaged in community, but at the finance level. And tell us a little bit about Volt Energy Utility and the marriage of finance and justice, and what your business model looks like.
Absolutely, and thank you for the work that you're doing. Starting, actually, I've been in the industry since 2009, developing and financing solar projects across America. I started out with a company called Volt Energy, developing projects for historically black colleges, the first African-American church ever to have solar energy, and leverage those experiences, understanding what inner city communities need to be able to scale with clean energy, and the wonderful opportunity to grow jobs and generate wealth in communities that need it. So in 2021, I expanded and launched a new company called Volt Energy Utility. Simple, we develop utility scale solar projects across America with a priority in energy communities, places that have been left behind. But we've pioneered this concept called the Environmental Justice Power Purchase Agreement. Power Purchase Agreement, the PPA, is a common tool that companies and universities and nonprofits use to procure clean energy. So we finance projects, as I mentioned, in those areas. But the Environmental Justice PPA, we work with our corporate partners where they take a percentage of their revenue from the project, pay a little bit extra premium for the project. We contribute a portion of our revenue into a foundation that we launched called Sharing the Power Foundation, that's making transformational environmental justice investments in both minority and rural communities across the country. And one example of that, about a year and a half ago, we signed one of our first environmental justice PPAs with Microsoft to develop 250 megawatts of utility scale solar across the country. And that was the first utility scale deal with an African-American solar developer and a major Fortune 500 company. While that's progress, there's still a lot of work to be done. But through that, not just with Microsoft, we've been able to sign other contracts through our environmental justice concept, where it's putting over $40 million of committed capital already into a foundation that's making investments in rural America and in minority communities. And I'll just give a few specific examples. Last year, we awarded over $200,000 in grants to organizations like the Center for Coalfield Justice in Pennsylvania that's training coal miners to be part of the just transition to clean energy. We made an investment in Appalachian Voices that is telling a story in Appalachia about how can they, move to a transition to a clean energy society. We invested in Gooder, founded by an African-American woman, Jasmine, and Jasmine Crow, what we're doing there is helping them to eliminate food waste by bringing clean food and, into certain parts of Atlanta. I share that to say that, just in a year's time frame, Foundation was launched for a year, being able to make those type of investments. But what I'm the most proud of is I think the greatest investment you can make is in young people. And so we launched a program called the Clean Energy and Environmental Justice Ambassador Fellowship. We had 16 bright students from historically black colleges and universities all across the country this summer working in industry, learning about, getting firsthand experience in clean energy, but being rooted in environmental justice. We're trying to see the next generation of leaders that are coming out to help us solve some of the biggest challenges, but making sure that under-resourced minority and rural communities are benefiting as well. And so when they finished a few weeks ago, their summer internships, 75% of them were offered either full-time jobs or fall internships. And, the other 25%, are looking at other opportunities. But they also are getting a $10,000 scholarship when they go back to college to make sure that they are becoming ambassadors on campus to spread the word. And so what the IRA has done is been able to supercharge the work that we're doing. One of the key things is with stabilizing the investment tax credit and having adders, one of the things when you're financing projects, you don't want instability. And so now having that, we can continue to ramp up our efforts to develop projects, in the forgotten parts of America to clean up dirtier parts of the grid, but still make sure that under-resourced minority communities are benefiting and thriving.
I was going to ask you about the adders and whether it's affecting the project finance now and how the structure of the bill is kind of unique in that it gives that bonus credit for investing in disadvantaged communities and energy communities in paying prevailing wage and using registered apprentices. Does that make it easier to get those projects built in those places that you're describing?
It has, because you're able to obviously leverage more tax equity coming into the projects. And as a smaller developer that's starting to scale a business, it's less cash that we have to put in the deals, but it's also prioritizing those areas that I mentioned before. Even though our primary focus is developing utility scale projects, I'll give a specific example of how the low income tax credit has benefited us. We're developing 2 megawatts in DC at Howard University. And that's part of Howard University is considered in a low income area. And what we've been able to do by having that additional 10% low income tax credit, which we'll hopefully we'll get in the next few months, will allow us to recycle some of those benefits back to the university. Will allow us to build EV charging stations on campus, but more importantly, again, I go back, the greatest investment is young people, and students all across campus are excited and have been part of the process to make that work.
Wonderful. Suzanne, you are Core Power's headquartered here in the U.S. You operate globally, though.
Yes, sir.
What's been the effect of the IRA in terms of U.S. competitiveness and the ability to drive change around the world in terms of lowering costs and providing more innovation, more capacity?
Yeah, you're absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that, and thank you to Climate Power for hosting us. Thank you to the administration for all the work that you're doing to implement the IRA. Core Power is an Idaho-based battery manufacturing and energy storage solutions provider. While we're based in Idaho, we have a presence in Vermont. That's where our energy storage work is done out of. And the crown jewel, if I can say that, is a manufacturing facility that we're building in Buckeye, Arizona. So that's in the West Valley, just outside of Phoenix. While we have been around since 2018, so pre-infrastructure bill, pre-IRA, what the IRA has really done is put the demand for battery cells and energy storage manufactured domestically into hyperdrive, right? So we've just seen the demand absolutely take off, and it's one of the things that's underscoring the investments that we're making. Our 1.3 million square foot facility in Buckeye is going to be employing or creating 700 new jobs during construction, and when we're at capacity, we'll be at 1,250 jobs. So that $1.2 billion investment is really important, not just for Buckeye, Arizona, and the state more broadly, but also for the nation and for our global customers. So we appreciate the support that the IRA has provided. We're also thrilled to have received a conditional commitment from the Department of Energy back in June for an $850 million loan to help support the construction of that facility. So thrilled to see that come forward.
That's great. Jessica, Solve is developing solar power all over the country, creating a lot of jobs as you grow. What's the impact on the communities where those utility scale projects are moving?
Thanks so much for that question, and thanks for allowing me to be here today. What we've seen all across the country, Solve Energy is the largest general contractor for utility scale solar in the country. We employed about 5,000 people across the U.S. last year, had operations in 29 states, and we're also the largest O&M provider in the country. So we have been able to, most of the places where we're seeing our construction, we've got 12 projects right now in different states and predominantly in rural communities. When you're building 250 to 500 megawatt projects, you're looking at thousands of acres, and most of those places happen to be in rural communities. So we might be the single largest economic investor in a lot of these communities. When these projects come in, they're going to see a huge, massive increase in their tax base and their tax revenue. We're employing almost 80% probably local employees. We're training them, we're giving them a new skill, we're working with local rental agencies, we're providing support to local catering facilities who are interested in working with us to bring lunches on site. So our impact in the communities where we're working is really pretty massive for the length of the project. I would also note that as an example, we're one of the only contractors that's or the only contractor that's done now our second facility in Navajo Nation, and we employed 80% local employees on the second site that we just recently finished and did a ribbon cutting for. So we're seeing in some of the most rural communities in the country work that we're doing that's really impacting and providing people with trainable, sustainable jobs.
There's been a lot of press about pushback on siting around the country. What's been your more recent experience? Are people still excited to get these jobs?
I think people are definitely still excited to get these jobs, and we have done a lot of education. We have a whole community outreach arm. We work with our developer partners to get in early and to do a lot of education over the course of the 12 to 18 months that we're in these rural communities. We go and work in the schools. We are partnering with local organizations. We're working with food banks. We are working with one of our partners, Heart of America, and doing school transformations in these communities. So a lot of the different things that we do are really about leaving a lasting impact wherever we go, making sure that the communities understand the economic development, the benefits, the job opportunities, and that maybe these short-term issues with siting and permitting and some different things that we're having, we're trying to change the hearts and minds on the ground to get them to understand that these are lasting, this is a lasting economic impact that we're making here.
That's great. Kevin, let me ask you one last question, and then I'm going to give one jump ball question to the group, and then we'll take a few questions from the audience. Schneider Electric's been around for a while, yes, but now committed to sustainability, and I wonder how that strategy developed, what you're seeing, and how you move forward.
Yeah. So thanks, John. Thanks for the administration of everything that you and the White House are doing. So the Inflation Reduction Act is bringing electrification to scale, as Tanya has highlighted, making clean energy more efficient and more affordable. To John's point, we are an older company. We're 187 years old, and we've been present in the U.S. for 119. And so in the early 1900s, we helped to electrify the United States the first time, and we have a presence in around 40% of the homes in this country. And so we've been there for 119 years, and we're excited about this next step. And so we're going to keep doing what we do best, and that's to empower our customers to make the most of their energy resources in bridging progress and sustainability for everyone. And for everyday Americans, this means more access to cleaner energy, cleaner electrification, and energy savings through greater efficiency driven by digitization. And it matters to us because it matters deeply to our employees and our customers. Last year, we actually crossed the halfway mark on our ambitious goal to save 800 million tons of carbon dioxide emissions for our customers. And so that's not just good for the globe, it's good for customers' bottom lines. And sustainability means finding innovative ways to maintain our way of life. And we as a company have been tracking this since 2005. We were definitely on the very early edge before it was a common theme. And so we do need one thing from Washington, and that's to stand behind the progress that's being made in this industry.
Well, you anticipated my jump ball question, which is there are some people who are coming back to Washington, maybe as early as next week, who think that we ought to repeal all this. And I wonder whether anybody has a message for the people who have sort of concluded that this is all just a big waste of time and money.
So, John, what I would say is, so I've been doing this for 30 years. 26 of it I worked for GE in global jobs, oil and gas industry, traditional power gen. There's not a country in the world that doesn't have local content and job requirements on large projects. The only one that didn't was the United States. And that's why we are where we are. So this is about not job creation, it's career creation. It's about giving people a path to middle class, the American dream that's been here since the founding of the country. And we have an opportunity to lead once again in the energy transition through innovation, technology, and jobs. And I think it's pretty exciting when you hear all the stories here. But this is not, like, to me, and I'm a neophyte when it comes to being in this town, this is not about what side of the aisle you're on. This is about creating jobs for real people. What I always tell people when we get criticized as a company, are we real, are we that, is that these are real people doing amazing things. And that's what everybody's talking about today.
John, I would like to say something.
Go ahead, Ty.
Due to the loss of jobs due to automation and AI, the money that provided through the IRA for workforce development has helped lower income and women tremendously. And to stop that progress, I don't see how anyone can think about stopping that progress to be able to offer workforce opportunities to people for jobs for the future. You know, the electrification is here. It's around the globe in other countries. And the workforce development, I can't tell you the number of women that contact me for support or advice or saying, because of this workforce development opportunity, I'm able now to go into a six-figure job.
John, from our perspective, we've got partners on the East Coast, the West Coast, the Gulf Coast, the Midwest. We're headquartered in Ohio. We've got an R&D facility in Michigan. This is the only city in the United States where any of this is controversial. Like, zero people, normal people in America, like, this is a political thing. Like, and we can, like, poll the audience here. Like, raise your hand if you're super enthusiastic about breathing more sulfur or carbon monoxide. Weird, right? Raise your hand if you think that a global oil cartel should dictate American policy. How about China? Okay. So, like, this is not actually controversial anywhere else in normal America. And I don't know, like, I'm super excited. Like, I don't want to flip the table. And, like, if you look at this, like, this is America right here. Like, the panel is like, this is what's happening. We didn't talk about, there's no reason to kind of talk about politics here. We're talking about families. We're talking about communities. We're talking about onshoring, manufacturing again in this country. These things are not controversial at all.
I was at a panel a couple of months ago where I was asked, how are we going to compete with global manufacturing with respect to wage, because labor is cheap outside of the United States? And, my answer was, that's not the place that we're looking to save money. The IRA is enabling us to invest in American families. I grew up in Michigan around automotive manufacturing, and to see us be in those communities, to be able to offer families, moms, dads, caretakers, the ability to have a livable wage. The IRA is investing in American families, like, full stop, period.
Yeah, a few years ago, our chairman was approached when the U.S. was waffling on what they were going to do, and they said, what are you going to do? You're going to do something different in the U.S. And actually, North America now represents the largest region for Schneider Electric. And we see that growth continuing. His comment was very black and white. He says it makes good business economic sense to continue. Our customers are demanding this of us. The private sector is demanding this of us, as well as cities and states want more of the decarbonization and electrification. We are there to serve our customers.
And I would just add, I mean, everything that's been said, we're going through decarbonization of all aspects of our economy. We have the opportunity really to transform folks that have been left behind. As President Biden has said, build from the bottom out, middle out. That's where we are right now. And one of the things that is vitally important, if you look at communities of color and the results of the IRA in just 1 year, 2/3 of the new jobs from the IRA are going into communities of color. 75% of the new projects are going into communities of color. What does that equate to for Black communities? We have 124 new projects in just 1 year in Black communities, which is equated to about $53.52 billion invested in those communities. So these are communities that have had all the bad aspects of a bad environmental policy, underinvestment, redlining. We have an opportunity to do the right thing and grow communities that have been suffering. In the same way, in rural communities, folks that have worked in fossil fuels, that have worked in coal mines, that have risked their lives to make sure we've all had the ability to have power. And as we're transitioning away, we need to make sure that they're prioritized to be part of this economy and for us to be able to lead on the world stage and rebuild our middle class. So I don't know how anyone in Washington can say this is not the right way to go. The rest of the world is going here, and we have an opportunity for the first time to work on people that need it the most and prioritizing those communities.
Lori, this was a terrific group of leaders. Yeah, thank you.
To see if there's any questions from folks in the audience or press, please go ahead.
Thanks for doing this. Jennifer Lloyd with Bloomberg News. So many of you talk about the importance of domestic manufacturing. Ørsted is of course warning it may walk away from its remaining offshore wind projects in the U.S. if it can't claim some of the ITC's adders, rather for domestic content or energy communities. Can you accommodate wind developer concerns without undermining the push that we're all talking about to rapidly build a strong domestic wind supply chain?
Well, I think one of the, probably, I don't know if anybody else wants to raise their hand on this one, but, we met with our North American CEO yesterday, and I think one of the factors that distinguishes American offshore wind from European offshore wind is it's new. Those supply chains need to be developed. I think there's still a great deal of enthusiasm amongst the companies and in the states with the governors and state legislatures reaching in to make sure that we get this right, that we move this forward. And I think we're still very optimistic that with the support of the Inflation Reduction Act, offshore wind has a very, very strong future, and we'll see these projects. There are now projects under construction, which is a good thing. That took a long time, but we think that the economics will work out. But obviously, the first projects are the most challenging because they're any time you're trying to build a new industry, you have to build back from the supply chains that we're seeing. But that's happening now. There's offshore wind investment in, I think the number now is in 44 states, building components, products, the port facilities. The president was up reviewing the building of a Jones Act vessel to be able to support the industry. So I think this is coming along, but the first set of projects I obviously have been challenging. That's a combination of things, including supply chain issues, et cetera.
Thank you. Zach Coleman with Politico, also Michigan native, so let's see representation. So I want to bring this a little bit in the news of the day. The big three auto companies have benefited from the IRA. Their contract with the UAW ends in a week, with a potential strike looming that would affect hundreds of thousands of workers at the big three and their suppliers. The role of electric vehicles and the way the big three are setting up some of those joint ventures has played a prominent role in these talks between the big three and UAW. So what is the White House doing to manage the relationship between the UAW and the big three, and how serious does the White House think the economic consequences of a strike would be?
Well, Zach, I'm not going to get in front of the negotiations. Obviously, we're monitoring this closely. The president's asked Gene Sperling to be in touch with both the companies and the union. We think that and as the president has said in his statements, that a contract that supports a fair deal with the workers, given the profits of the companies, and is in the interest of everyone. We've tried to, and recently announced proposals on retrofitting original existing facilities, using the assets that we have in the loan program office can be useful in the context of transition, but ultimately it's up to them to bargain, and we're monitoring that closely.
We have a question up here on the front. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, I'm asking about education. I think about the average, American, like my own mom, who would have no idea that these tax benefits and rebates are available. What are your thoughts on how to do a more nationwide education program so that the average person can actually take advantage of this?
Steph, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, there's a behavioral economics institute called RARE that does climate studies, and they looked at what causes someone to take climate action, like putting solar on their home, buying an EV, and they said, is it whether you believe in climate change? No, that's not predictive. If you believe in climate change, sometimes you don't take climate action. Is it whether you're Democrat or Republican, to the point of this panel? No. Whether you're Democrat or Republican does not predict whether you take climate action. What if it's, if your friend or neighbor is doing it, will you do it too? Yes. That is the number one predictor of whether someone takes climate action in this country. Same thing when Solstice is enrolling people in community solar. If someone that's a stranger tells you about community solar, and remind you it's no upfront cost, guaranteed savings on your electricity bill. If a stranger tells you about it, it's a 1% conversion rate. If someone you trust, like your employer or your town, your mayor, or someone like your buddy at work, if they tell you your conversion rate is 30 to 50%. We sometimes talk about climate action and this big grandiose thing, but ultimately we are humans. We want to do what our friends and the people we love are doing. And so what our responsibility is to create a clean energy constituency. We have to get in the streets and get people involved in little actions that build up in network effects to actually affect our climate. Climate change is an all hands on deck problem. And if we're saving people money on their electricity bills, we should get both parties involved with that.
Yeah, I would like to answer that as well. The IRA has allowed me to expand my company. Back in 2016, I began my EV charging manufacturing venture. Didn't have the funding, didn't have access to that. And currently, I am manufacturing out of Fort Worth, Texas. My brand is She EV. So we created a She EV car club for women. Only a third of all the EV drivers in the world are women. And just like the auto workers, they're looking for more women customers. We created a community to help women understand, answer any of their questions they have, but also help them to be able to transition to the EV life. That was really, I'm an EV driver, of course. That was really easy for me, because once you learn how to do it, you see other people doing it. But the main idea of She EV was to find safer places for women to charge their cars, because usually they're in the dark in the back. And so I created and started manufacturing my chargers to designate those areas for us to be able to do that. So sometimes if you can't find it, you build it. And that's what we did.
And I also think this has got to be also done at the grassroots level by each one of us. So, Turtle Creek, when you really look at the town itself, we've done a lot of work with the 6 surrounding communities, which we're quite honestly a little bit left behind and underinvested in. I think when we announced the program that we're going to do with the support of the LPO, the quote of the Turtle Creek mayor was, "We've been waiting 45 years for a company like EOS." So what do? We spend a lot of time working with the local community. And when we say that, this isn't going to meetings. This is going into the high school, figuring out how to train people. When you talk to the principal and the superintendent of schools, they tell you kids either go to college or they go work in fast food. We're now giving them a second option. Come and build a career. We promote from within. Our workforce is, 50% minority, 30% women, 20% veterans. We look like our surrounding community, and we build that day by day. We bring people in and tour them through the facility to see what we're building to get the support that we're going to do. Gilbert and I are going to have a conversation after this panel here, because part of our community plan, we have an unstable grid. The power goes out when it rains at the factory. So we have land that used to have houses on it that's sitting barren. Let's put solar and storage on there, and let's give people a good grid. Let's make it so that people want to live in the Mon Valley again, and let's create careers. But each one of us has to do that in our own communities. It can't just be an education process. It's got to be action by companies, by real people.
I'm not picking on any specific media organizations in this room, but I think we have to be honest with the American public. There's a loud minority that's telling all these horror stories about clean energy and the IRA. End of the day, the average, it's a kitchen table issue. There's rebates to basically retrofit all aspects of your home, which is going to reduce your utility bills, going to improve environmental health outcomes, and create ladders of opportunity. We need, as an industry too, and that's why I appreciate all the groups that put this together, better messaging. I can say this administration has been out all aspects of America telling the story and the benefits, but it's hard when you're going against commercials and well-oiled machines, no pun intended, that are going after, and providing misinformation to Americans. And so we need to tell the story like it is.
Outstanding. Okay. John, anything final to say?
No, just a great group of leaders. I'm, jazzed up, ready to go.
Yeah. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Very
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.